Okay, so welcome to this lesson. We are going to be looking at continuing to use our reduction formulae and our special angles. And so we're going to dive straight in and we're going to do one of these together first, and then we're going to ask you to pause and try some, and then we're going to go over them. Right, so let's just quickly revise for ourselves the key bits of information that we need here. The first thing is we need the ability to calculate trig ratios of special angles, okay? The second thing is that we need to be able to reduce angles, all right? We need to do what we call reductions. And the reductions rely every time on knowing our cast diagram, all sine, tan, cos. Okay, remember that this is 0 or 360 degrees. This is 90 degrees. This is 180 degrees. And this here is 270 degrees. Okay, so remember also that if we come off a horizontal axis, our ratio name stays the same. And if we come off a vertical axis, our ratio changes to the co-ratio. Sine becomes cosine and cosine becomes sine. Okay, so let's dive straight into this first one, okay? And we're gonna do the first, we'll do the first two. We'll do the first one sort of a little bit slowly. Sine 150 is the same as sine, which quadrant are we in? We're in quadrant 2. Sine's positive in quadrant 2, and we're 30 degrees away from a horizontal axis. So sine 150 is exactly the same size as sine of 30. Tan of 225 is in quadrant 3, and we are 45 degrees away from the horizontal axis, and tan is positive in quadrant 3, so tan 45 degrees. Okay, now at this stage we won't know if you've used a calculator or not. Sine of 30 is a half and tan of 45 is 1, and the final answer is a half. Okay, however, just a reminder that you do need to be able to calculate these without a calculator. All right, so definitely what you cannot do is go straight to the answer. Another really important idea is that you can check your answer. In other words, you can put that into your calculator and see that that's the correct answer. Okay, we're going to pause the video right there, in fact, and we're going to ask you to try as many of these as you can, and then we'll go over them shortly. Okay, this next one, cos 150. Well, we're in the second quadrant. Now we can choose. We can either say, well, we're in the second quadrant by 60 degrees off a vertical axis, or by 30 degrees off a horizontal axis. Either way, cos of 150 is negative. Here we've got a choice. We can either have cos of 30, or we can have the sine of 60. Sine of 60 because we're 60 away from a vertical axis. Cos of 30 because we're 30 away from a horizontal axis. Tan of 210, we've got no choice here. This is going to just be the same as the tan of 30. We're in quadrant 3, and tan is positive in quadrant 3. Now, cos of 30 is negative root 3 over 2. And tan of 30 is divided by 1 over root 3. So tan of 30 is 1 over root 3. But now what happens, remember when we divide, we're going to tip and times. So we're actually going to get negative 3 over 2 as our final answer. Root 3 times root 3 when we tip and times, negative 3 over 2. And just to show you, we can check that answer on our calculator. Here we go. Cos of 150 over the tan of 210. And there's the answer, negative 3 over 2. Okay, right. Let's look at the next one. Cos of 300, we're in quadrant 4. Cos is positive in quadrant 4, and we're 60 degrees away from the horizontal axis. We could use sine 30, all right, but let's use cos 60. Sine of 225, we're in quadrant 3, and we're 45 degrees away from the horizontal axis. Negative sine 45 degrees. Cos of 135 degrees, okay, now I'm going to do something here which might surprise you. I'm going to use the vertical axis. We are 45 degrees away from the vertical axis, and cos is negative in quadrant 2, so this is negative sine 45. Now you might say, why didn't I use the cos? We could have, but in fact what I've realized is that now these will divide out. Tan 150, well, we're in quadrant 2, tan's negative in quadrant 2, and we're 30 degrees away from a horizontal axis. So there we have it. Now, we can divide this out. We don't need to evaluate these. They divide in once each. Now we've got cos 60 divided by tan 30. Cos 60 is actually a half. And notice that there are 3 negatives, so our final answer here is still negative. Those 2 negatives have divided up, but there's still a negative. Cos 60 is a half, and tan of 30 is 1 over root 3. Right? And when we tip in times, we're going to get negative root 3 over 2. Okay, these are very, very standard question types. Okay, the next one, sine of negative 150, right? So let's just think about that. Which quadrant are we in if we go 150 degrees clockwise? Well, we're actually in quadrant 3. Sine's negative in quadrant 3. So in fact, it's going to be negative sine 30 degrees. Tan of 390 degrees. If we take off 360, we get tan of 30 degrees. Cos of 180 degrees. Now this one we can do on a calculator, but remember what we said, if it's on the axis, let's pick a value for our radius. If our radius is, say, 5, at 180 degrees, the x value will be minus 5. So minus 5 over 5, remember cos is x over r, we get negative 1. We are going to show you another way of thinking about that, and that's to visualize the graphs, which is what we're going to do next. Cos of negative 30, we're in the fourth quadrant by 30 degrees, so this is just cos of 30 degrees. Okay, now we've got a reasonable amount of simplifying to do still here. What we do know is that our final answer is going to be positive because we've got 2 negatives dividing, so we don't need to worry about the signs anymore. Sine of 30 is a half. Tan of 30 is 1 over root 3. Cos of 30 is root 3 over 2. So in fact what we get here is 1 over 2 root 3 divided by root 3 over 2. 1 over 2 root 3 divided by root 3 over 2. That's times by 2 over root 3. I've just done a tip in times. Those 2's will divide out, and we get a final answer of 1/3. Right, I'm inclined to just check that, really hoping we haven't made any silly mistakes. If we check it on a calculator, we'll be able to confirm that. Okay, so let's have a look. Sine of minus 150 multiplied by the tan of 390 divided by the cos of 180. Just be careful that we close that bracket so that it doesn't keep inside the cos function. And now the cos of negative 30. And we're going to close brackets, and we get a final answer of positive 1/3. That allows us to move on with an enormous amount of confidence because we know that we've got that question right. Okay, let's do the next one. Sine of 270, that's actually on the axis. Right, so once again, if I choose a y value, choose an r value, let's say r is 5. It would point down to minus 5 on the y-axis. And remember, sine is y over r. Sine of 270 is negative 1. We won't know if you've used your calculator or not. Cos of 110. Now, this is interesting because this is not a special angle. Right? Cos of 110 is actually in the second quadrant, so it's definitely going to be negative. I could either go with cos of 70 or I could go with the sine of 20. Okay, let's suppose I decide to go with the sine. Let's decide I'm supposed to go with the cos of 70. Right, now this next one, sine of 160. 160 is also not going to reduce to a special angle. But can I maybe involve the 70 again? Sine of 160, I'm in quadrant 2, so it's going to be positive. And I am 70 degrees away from the vertical axis, from 90. So in fact, if I change off the vertical axis, I'm going to change that to a cos 70. Okay, I don't know what cos 70 is without a calculator, but in fact I don't need to know because it's going to divide out. Tan of 315, we're in quadrant 4, tan's negative in quadrant 4, and we're 45 degrees away from the horizontal axis. Okay, and now at this point, sorry, I realize that we've lost the 45 there. That should be tan 45. I'll fix it on the next line here. Negative 1 times, what we're going to be able to do now is we can divide that out and divide that out. Altogether, we've got 3 negatives, so our answer is definitely going to be negative. And we've got 1, and on the bottom we've got tan 45. Tan of 45 is 1. Final answer, negative 1. Okay, all right. Next one, and again, if you haven't tried all of these, then pause the video. Don't just watch us doing them. Try them yourself first. Okay, sine of 450. Well, if we subtract 360, we get sine of 90. Cos of minus 300. That is back into quadrant 1. If we were to add 360, we'd get cos 60. So that's just cos 60. Sine of 91. Now that's 91 is very, very close to a vertical axis. I'm inclined to go with cos of 1 degree. Okay. On the bottom we've got cos of 359 degrees. That's very close. That's 1 degree away from a horizontal axis. In quadrant 4, that's exactly the same as cos of 1 degree. I don't know what cos of 1 degree is, but in fact I'm not going to need to. Tan of 240 degrees, we're in quadrant 3 by 60 degrees. Tan's positive in quadrant 3, so this is exactly the same as tan of 60 degrees. Okay, this is just 1. These cos 1 degrees are going to divide out. Prefer not to use the word cancel. They divide out, leaving 1 in each case. So our final answer is definitely positive, and it's going to be cos 60 divided by tan 60. Now let's take a look. Cos 60 is a half. And we're going to divide by tan 60. Now tan 60 is actually this, tan 60 is the square root of 3 over 1. Okay, from our fan. When we tip and times this, we're going to get 1 over 2 root 3. Okay, and we can leave our answer like that. We could also rationalize the denominator of it. That would actually be 3, sorry, it would be root 3 over 6. Let's just show you how that looks. Root 3 over 6. If we type this into our calculator, what our calculator does for us is it expresses it with a rational denominator. And it's going to do that by multiplying the top and the bottom by the square root of 3. On the top we'll get the square root of 3. On the bottom we'll get 2 lots of the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. So we're actually going to get the square root of 3 over 6. And there it is. Okay, we don't necessarily have to put our answer into that form. Okay, the next one, tan of negative 100. Right, we're going 100 degrees in a clockwise direction. We end up in quadrant 3, and tan's positive in quadrant 3, and we are 80 degrees away from the horizontal axis. So this is going to be tan of 80. Sine of minus 20 degrees. We're in quadrant 4, 20 degrees away from a horizontal axis, negative sine 20 degrees. 20 degrees Nancy-Kinga. We have a problem because it's not a special angle. So what we're hoping here is that we can involve a special angle somewhere else. Well, involve the same angle. 20 degrees. 290 is good. 290 is 20 degrees off a vertical axis. This is in quadrant 4. Cos is positive in quadrant 4. Cos of 290 is in fact exactly the same size as the sine of 20 degrees. And the tan of 280 degrees, well, we're in quadrant 3, all right, no, we're not. We're in quadrant 4, so tan's negative, and we are 80 degrees away from a horizontal axis. Okay, if we look at this, the tan 80 is going to divide out with that, and the sine 20 is going to divide out with that. There are two negatives, which gives us a positive. Final answer equals 1. And once again, we could put that into a calculator and check it. Okay, the next one, and in fact the last one of these that we're going to do, is this one. Sine of 180 plus theta. Now here we cannot use a calculator, all right? But we know that when we go off the horizontal axis, 180 plus a bit, then we end up in quadrant 3, and we've come off a horizontal axis. Okay, so this is going to be negative sine theta. Cos of negative theta, I just want to show you something here. Cos of negative theta is positive cos theta. I don't want to write plus cos theta here. The reason being is that this now looks like a subtraction. It looks like we're now adding. It's actually this result times this result. So either write a times sign or put a bracket in. Sine of 90 minus theta, we're in quadrant 1. Sine's positive in quadrant 1. We come off a vertical axis cos theta. And cos of 180 minus theta, we're in quadrant 2, off a horizontal axis negative cos theta. Okay, and what's going to happen here is that a cos is going to divide out with a cos. We've got two negatives, so the final answer is positive, and we end up with sine theta over cos theta. Now, we haven't revised it yet, but we should remember from grade 11 and grade 10 that sine divided by cos is exactly the same as tan theta. We will revise that just now, soon, okay? But for now, let's just accept that. Okay, we're going to stop there. Next time we're going to continue with something similar but different, and we look forward to seeing you then. Have a great day.